Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Paul, Vice President with Colliers Project Leaders. I'm happy to be here today virtually. Normally, I've done this in person to classes like yours. I am going to tell a little bit about what Colliers Project Leaders does to inform you about options beyond graduation. And I'm also going to tell you about my career and how I've advanced to where I am as Vice President. And hopefully give you some tips along the way to help to advance your career. So who's Colliers? We're a project management firm focused on owners' representation of construction projects. We have offices all across Canada, and we help to deliver projects anywhere from a wastewater treatment plant to a recreation center, roads, and anything in between. Anything is kind of on the real property side of things. We've been in business for 30 years. And have 30 offices across Canada. My responsibility is Eastern Ontario, so North Bay to Peterborough over to Cornwall in Ontario. And then also under my responsibility is the 3 territories, Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and Yukon. So you can see the yellow dots there up in the north. Those are all projects that my team has been overseeing. We work for 70% of our clients are public sector and the remainder private sector. So we do a lot of work for the main public institutions in town, the federal government, provincial government, the municipalities, City of Ottawa, and we work for universities. We're building the Nickel building here on Carleton's campus and multiple other projects with Carleton and the other post-secondary institutions. We work for private sectors such as OSEG, where we led Lansdowne Park redevelopment. We work for First Nations. Some of our other private sector include big landlords like Manulife. We work for law firms like Gowlings and Spear Street, which is a landlord where Sienna is the main tenant in Canada. So it's a wide variety. It's always what's kept me interested is the different types of projects, the different types of clients that we get to work with, keeps it very interesting your day to day. So why are we here? Why do we provide these projects? Is it, it's not just about building the building and getting it built on time. It's really about improving the lives of Canadians. One of my favorite projects that really is dear to my heart was the Ottawa Rotary Home. It's a respite care facility for special needs children so that their parents can get a break from them. These children can't get a regular babysitter. They need special care, medical care. And so otherwise the parents don't get a break. They're on call 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And this facility gives them that break to go get groceries by themselves, go have a date with their spouse or partner. And so as we were building it, we had the Rotary Club volunteers helping to fundraise for the project and participate in project meetings. We also had families come and talk to me and tell me about how much it meant to them, that facility. To me, that's why we're here. Those are the things that really get you up in the morning and wanting to deliver successfully on their project. It's not just the tangible building of the building. So I think that's really why we're here. So what are some of the things we come across and challenges as project managers? The collage here shows you all those things that we come across. It's not just about the technical. What size is the rebar? How big of the beam do we need to be? What type of drywall should we have? There's funding and budget and public consultation, stakeholder engagement, and all these things and communications that come into play that are really important to making sure that your project is successful. Absolutely, the baseline is those technical, but you also have to understand all of these other aspects. So what do we know about projects? Well, we know that they fail early, not at the end. Sometimes in the news, you might sound, oh, the project was about to be done next month, but now it's 6 months late, or there was issues with it operating and it wasn't built correctly. Well, that didn't happen at the very end of that project. It happened early for various reasons, whether you didn't think out what was planned later on, what issues might come up. And so that's what we do. We make sure we think about, we've been through it before, we know of a lot of these things that can happen, so we plan for them. We make sure we are thinking about it early, and we're bringing that forward into documents and into the design to make sure that we avoid some of those surprises later on. Of course, we can't get everything, but with our expertise and our variety of backgrounds of our team, we're able to resolve a lot of those issues. So what some of our solution, what do we bring to our clients? Well, we bring the capacity of a talented roster of people in a variety of backgrounds. We have civil engineers and mechanical, electrical, any type of engineer. We have architects and technologists and tradespeople that have built themselves up into project management careers. So we have a wide variety to draw on for any type of capacity issue our client might have. And in that, we have the expertise, and we have templates and processes that we can add to our clients and to ensure project success. The biggest thing, though, I think, is that we bring leadership. We really push this onto our team and make sure that people understand that leading a project is one of the most important things that you can have for success. And it starts with communication. It starts with your approach to your project team and how you deliver on your promises and how you engage the teams around you to deliver on theirs. So these are the three things that we bring that help to ensure project success for our clients. In a typical model before, you'd have an owner and they would oversee the project. They'd engage design consultants and contractors to build it. And the owner would review technical aspects, but there was an issue with getting things on time. And as we were evolving into a faster society, we wanted projects to be delivered faster. So there was a demand from the clients to have project management as part of the service offering. So the design consultants tacked it on to the bottom of the list there, and they focused on the architecture and the engineering aspects. And project management was sort of secondary to the design aspect. But that's not what the clients wanted and needed. They wanted a project manager that could be an advocate for them right at the forefront and putting project controls and management as being #1 priority, and allowing the design consultants to focus on what they're good at, which is designing things, doing design calculations and producing drawings and reviewing the construction on site, and allowing the contractors to focus on building and coordinating with their trades and bringing in materials. But the project leadership and management resides with a specific project manager, and in our case, it's ourselves, and we represent our clients in that aspect. So when we are engaged, typically an owner will have a program of work. That could be multiple new building constructions. It could be just roofing replacements across all their buildings, or a variety of different types of projects. One roofing, one new HVAC system, a brand new building, whatever it may be. And so they can bring us in for a specific project where they don't have the expertise. You know, small municipalities will engage us when they build a wastewater treatment plant or a recreation center once every 30 or 50 years. And so they don't have that expertise sitting around, so they'll bring us in to deliver that project for them. And they may deliver some of their other smaller projects on their own. In other cases, they may give several projects to us. They could be similar in type. So those roofing replacements or the HVAC replacements I talked about, those could be brought in as saying, here, we'll package them up to Colliers and you can deliver them for us. Where there's some efficiencies to that for us having commonalities between projects and bundling things together. One of the other ways, such as our account with Infrastructure Ontario, we manage the entire program of work. So the client comes up and says, here's our work for the year or multi-year, and here, you manage it, you plan it out, plan which project should start when and where, and how you're going to resource that, and we'll deliver from there. So we manage the entire projects for owners like Infrastructure Ontario. So in delivery of the project, one of the things that we do is we're in the early stages. We call it, we're helping to do decision support, and we're helping to deliver on those figuring out what the project should look like. We're doing the business cases and doing the financial pro forma analysis, and figuring out what the best option is for them. It could be figuring out what the location is, determining based on commuting distances and price of the property and what are some of the risks associated with that property. Helping with P3 projects and helping to determine the business case to going down that path and what market could handle as far as workload and what the risk you could push onto the contractor versus carry yourself within reason. And so we do all sorts of aspects at the early stage of the project in preparation for it to become a project. So once it has become defined as a project, we do all sorts of those typical project delivery aspects. So risk management, stakeholder engagement, we have communication plans, cost tracking to make sure that we're making sure costs are on target, and schedule is very important, of course, to make sure that the schedule is on track and we're keeping track of the deliverables of people and keeping them accountable for what they've been promised that they will do. And we do things like earned value management to make sure that we know a good metric financially on how we are performing, not just looking on site and saying, yeah, I think we're about 50% complete. We have good metrics to be able to determine where they are and where they're going, and so we can better inform our client. Of course, we also understand the technical aspects of a project. We need to know what's happening and what are some of those things that we need to do. So whether that rebar is sized properly or placed in the right spot, we need to have that understanding to be able to question the engineering to make sure that they're thinking about it and putting it properly into their design. One of the biggest things, like I said, is leadership. And so I like this quote from Thomas Paine: lead, follow, or just get the heck out of the way. I think some of you have probably been in a situation where you maybe in group work where you have someone that really steps up and leads the group and everyone's following in and following that lead, and it works really, really well and you're very successful in that. In other times you might have a leader and they're not quite leading properly. They're not really getting in front of it and they're just getting in the way, and then you're butting heads and things just aren't as smooth. And so I really like this. You need to know when to push and when to pull. You need to know when to be in that leadership seat and when to sit in the passenger seat and let someone else lead. And that's acquired. You don't just learn that right away. It takes a bit of time. And certainly one of those things that I recommend is be patient to my young staff, is be patient. It takes 10 years to get 10 years of experience. Now you can get good quality experience out of that 10 years or not, or lower quality, but being able to be patient with, I will get there and I'll learn learn those aspects, certainly a challenge. A couple of years ago, we had a client engagement event where we brought in some of our clients from across Canada on a variety of sectors to gain some feedback from them on what it is why they engage project management as a third party, and also more broadly, but also specifically on what they liked about Colliers. One of our clients coined the term the new PM. In the past, the project manager focused more on checking the technical and making sure it met their client requirements. But now that's the minimum. It is far more than that. It's about providing all those other softer skills in that collage that I talked about. It's knowing that. So we broke it down. We took their comments, we broke them down, quoted them and put them into different categories: be totally engaged, be business savvy, and be the right partner. I'll read you a couple of things that they've said about what is important to us in the next couple of slides. So being the owner, we need to think of their money as our money and spend it wisely like we would our own. Be proactive, help set the right expectations from the beginning, communicate effectively and avoid surprises. This is huge. They want real-time information and they don't want to hear about it through some public, through some social media or something like that. They want to hear about it from their project manager, and good or bad, they need to know. We need to ask questions, listen actively, and be really involved and care about what our clients want. Being business savvy. So we need to think like our client and really understand that there's internal politics, the small p politics, not the big politics of the different political parties that you're going to vote on for federal and provincial parties, but the internal politics, and there's always internal politics, and understanding that and how to make a decision go through and how to bring people along, because often you're creating a lot of change. So there's a lot of change management that has to go on, which is extra communication and engagement with those staff. So really understanding what our clients, their context and their business landscape will help a lot. Helping them look outward and understand future trends so they can incorporate them into their design or into their operation of their facility. And lastly, is be the right partner. Our clients really want us to be partners with them and help them along, because we're really their advocates, sitting at their side, overseeing and keeping the designers and the contractors accountable throughout. So they really want us to be proactive and bring creative solutions to problems. They rely on us to build on the expertise across the country and help them know what they don't always know, and recommend different paths forward to best align with their interests and objectives, and help them with their expertise for front-end strategies. So a lot of different things to help our clients along the way. So another quote here, the persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Calvin Coolidge is telling you that you don't have to be the most educated person. You don't have to be the smartest in your class to get ahead. Absolutely, you're all here because you're bright as engineers. Being persistent and keeping determined on your goals and meeting them and setting new goals is going to help you a lot in your career. George Bush said at a convocation, he said, he was making his speech and saying, to all you A and B students, congratulations. Hard work paid off, and you're really earned it with those great marks. To all you C students, even you can be president. Now, of course, a little bit of oil money and connections in Texas probably help you to get voted in, but still, he was focused and he kept going, and he wasn't the smartest, but he was good, and he understood what needed to be persistence. And so I think that's been a big part of me and my advancement in my career is I'm persistent. I'm a little bit impatient, but I'm also patient to know it's going to take me a bit of time to learn that. I'm impatient in that I want to get something more interesting to do and to take on. And so certainly something to learn from. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and jump into a little bit about myself. So here I am. I grew up in a little small town, Rosslyn, British Columbia. I'm at the top of Grey Mountain here. I did a lot of backcountry skiing, so I've just hiked up the mountain and about to ski down in probably about a foot of powder untouched. So I'm in my glory here, just loving life and about to shoot down. In high school, I was good at math and science. And so everyone told me to go into engineering, but I had no idea what engineering was. And maybe you don't either. You know, it took me a while, even until I started working, to really understand what engineering is. The best part I find about engineering, it's one of the best undergraduate degrees where you can move into a professional role right away without doing further education, like a doctor or a lawyer. And there's lots of variety. You can go all sorts of directions with engineering. You don't have to stay in a technical. You can go into management, project management, like myself. So I applied to several different universities. I didn't really know where to go. My grandfather had gone to Queen's, which is why I applied to Queen's. And I ultimately decided to go with Queen's. Never been to Ontario, never been to the Queen's campus. So it was a big adjustment, a lot of new things, being on my own, a lot of freedom. It caused some challenges. You know, schools, university's hard, engineering's hard, especially first year. And my grades slipped big time. I'd never seen such low marks, and that was hard. But I stuck with it, had my perseverance and determination, and I got a tutor, and I got back up to speed, and I went and I passed, and now I have my bachelor in mechanical engineering. Some of you are probably challenged with that first job. It's always so hard to get, and they ask for 5 years of experience, new grad, 5 years experience. Doesn't make sense, doesn't match up. But So when I finished first year, I went back to my hometown in Rossland and worked a landscaping job for a family friend of ours, mowing lawns, watering flowers, that kind of thing. And I played soccer. I really liked playing soccer. I played competitive growing up, and so I played on a men's league team. And in a small town, you play with a variety of ages. So we're sitting down with the team afterwards and having a beer. And one of the guys asked me what I was doing. So I'm engineering, going into mechanical. Queens has a common first year, so you specialize into second year. And he said, "Oh, well, I'm the mechanical engineering head, and our goalie there's the civil engineering manager, and you know, him over there, that's the technologist and mechanical technologist and a civil and electrical technologist." And so, holy smokes, I'm on the right team here. So, but we kept going, and you know, I showed up and I showed my professionalness to them on the field. And after one of the games, the guys said, "We just want a contract, and we could use some extra help around the office. Would you like to join us?" So, absolutely. And so I conferred with our family friend and transitioned out of the landscaping job. They were happy for me to take on something in my field, and jumped into that job for the rest of the summer. And what a great experience. I just took on whatever they had for me. Sometimes it was filing, sometimes it was a little bit more involved, but I just took it all in. And so my lesson to you is just get involved. It may not be soccer, maybe it's not even a sport, maybe it's your music or a book club or debate, or maybe it's a volunteer activity, but get involved. You could be part of your university association. Get involved, meet people, ask questions, and you'll be amazed at what you might find. It may not happen right away, but just keep building that network, and you'll come across something that'll really help you. And what it does is it just moves you to the top of the pile. I get lots of resumes in, especially new grads, and they're hard to decipher between them. But if you know them or you've met them and you have a good rapport with them, you at least want to interview them. Then it's up to you to prove yourself in the interview and prove yourself once they do give you a job offer, but it helps you to get in. So be involved. So fast forward, I worked for AMEC for a couple summers in engineering, and then one summer they were very slow. So I worked in a factory doing hydraulic fittings. So then I was in fourth year, and you start moving through fourth year in January, February. Some of my friends were starting to get job offers, and I was getting a bit nervous. I hadn't got a job offer, and I've been applying to jobs. I hadn't had anything. And so I keep pushing and pushing, and nearing the end of the year, I was getting a bit deflated. So the Euro Cup was going on in Portugal, and so I booked I got some tickets to some games, and I booked a flight. And that afternoon, AMEC got a hold of me and said, "We just won a contract. We'd love to have you back full time after you graduate." Oh, wow, that's such an opportunity. And yeah, we'd like you right away. All right. So I decided to take the job. I couldn't justify throwing a bunch of money away that I didn't have. I was going to go into debt to travel versus taking a full-time job in my field. I couldn't do it. So I took the job. So I moved back to Rossland, which is where AMEC was. And one of our first projects, the project that I was on was in Hanford, Washington. So Hanford is a nuclear waste disposal site that takes on nuclear waste for almost the entire of the United States. Anything from nuclear sub to nuclear medicine and everything in between. So they had these low activity waste containers, steel containers. And now low activity waste is about an 8-hour total lifetime exposure. So I thought that was pretty high, but I guess high would be instant exposure causes major damage to you. Think of Chernobyl sort of thing. And so, so this low activity waste was in these steel containers on the edge of the Columbia River. The Columbia River weaves through BC, through Washington State, and out into the Pacific Ocean. So on the corner of the river, there were these tanks, and they're leaking. So potentially leaching out into the soil, but potentially into the water as well. Obviously not a good thing to have this nuclear waste. So what we were designing was a pilot project to to protect this. So what they would do is they would dry the waste, put it into a roll-off box, kind of like a big garbage bin, add some silica, add some other additives, put 2 giant electrodes in there and zap it with electricity. And so what would happen is it would create a glass block, still radioactive, so you still have your half-life to reduce the radioactivity, but it would no longer leach into the soil. So they'd take these roll-off boxes and bury them in an area in the desert, so that they're away from human contact, but it would at least get it so that it's not going to damage any further wildlife. So the picture that you see here is actually the full-scale facility. I was happy that about 10 years later, they actually had rolled out the full-scale facility to treat all this waste. One of the things I was doing was designing a pallet transporter. So it would move these boxes from area to area and then onto trucks to get into the desert. But you wanted to be remote control. It was something that was never built before. These were super heavy blocks, so it took a special system. So I did a lot of design calculations on the strength of the boxes and the strength of these pallets and the temperatures, and taking that into account, and working with manufacturers to figure out how to design this thing. So it was quite interesting. Now, the U.S. federal government cut funding to the pilot all of a sudden, and we had about 200 people working on it, and poof, no work in 2 weeks. So a bunch of people were from out of province, had traveled in, so they left back home. Some of the more senior people had lots of vacation time, so they took vacation until the company could get more projects in. But I didn't have vacation. I'd kind of just started, so I hadn't built up much. So I decided to move. AMAC had another opportunity in Saskatchewan, in Saskatoon, where they had the potash industry was booming. It was a great time for potash, so they were expanding mines and redoing processing, smelting of it. And so what it is, potash is underground. They bring it up on a conveyor belt, like the big white one you see there going up into the building. It goes into the building, they crush it, they will then use flotation and different types of processes to separate out the ore, the potash from the slag and other pieces. So my job was to design those conveyor belts. So working with manufacturers to determine sizing, make sure the weights were appropriate and chain sizes and everything, and then writing specifications for it. I'd also do pump calculations for flocculants. So flocculants are the little chemicals that they add to the process to help to separate out the materials, the ore. And so there are different viscosity of materials or of liquids that they would use. And so quite different pumps. So I learned about all the different types of pumps and how to calculate them and doing all sorts of things. So it was quite interesting. I got to go to site a few times, but mainly in the design office. So at one point, they didn't really need me anymore, but back in Rossland, they wanted me back. So one of the things though that I learned along the way is I just kept saying yes. I said yes to everything. It got me great opportunities. I said yes to the small things, but I did them really well, so people were comfortable giving me more complex things. And I was sitting with my manager one time, and he said, Michael, one day you're going to have to learn to say no, but it's good you're saying yes now. I didn't really know what he meant by that until much later in my career. I certainly know now. I just can't do everything. There's just so much on my plate. I can't get to everything. So I have to sometimes say, no, I can't. Or here's how I can do it. I'll get someone else to do it and delegate the work. But when you're young in your career, you got to say yes. It's going to help you a long ways. I have some people that have joined us over the years that are younger, and they've said yes, and they're hugely successful. Some of those that say no, oh, I don't do filing, or I don't do that. I'm an engineer. I don't do that. I'm above that. We kind of step over those people because they're just challenging to work with, and yes, ask for more challenging things to do. But do those little things well, and then figure out how someone else can do them for you, and move on. But saying no early on just discourages your managers. So here I was moving back to Rosslyn, and well, Trail is right next to us, which is where the smelter is. So Tecominco, now just Tech, has a lead zinc smelter here. So what you're seeing is the lead zinc. Zinc is not really shown. The acid plant, and they also produce fertilizer. They in processing these, they have a bunch of trace metals: gold, silver, germanium, indium. Now, indium is in touchscreens, and so in small quantities, very, very valuable. So they had an ore that was high in tin, high in indium, a lead ore, and but they had to get the tin out in order to get the indium out, and in order to process the lead afterwards. So what happens is they take basically ore or dirt and rock, and they pour it into a hopper, and it gets melted by a big furnace into like red liquid form. You pump it out of the furnace and into these pots. Now, a pot could be about 1.5 meters in diameter, and it would be steel on the outside and refractory brick in the inside to protect the steel. And so what you do is you superheat it. So you really heat the molten lead up, and then super cool it, pump it into a next pot and super cool it. When you super cool it, a dross comes on the top, which is just a dust, and you can rake that dust off. And in that case, that was the tin. So you'd pull the tin off, and then further down the line in other processes, we'd take thallium out, we'd take arsenic out. So you'd have a big screw conveyor full of arsenic coming out of the lead. So pretty toxic environment, and you get kind of a rough crowd that works there. While you're in there, you have to wear a face mask on all the time. And if you're doing higher risk activities, which would be welding and things like that produce a smoke, because the smoke is the worst for you to inhale, and they'd have to be wearing a full backpack with air supply. While I was there, I had my lead levels checked. So I had a blood test every month. And I saw my lead levels go from about a street level of 5, which is what you and I would have right now, up to about 35. Now, the limit for the site was about 45, and the legal limit was 60. Once you got to 45 on the site, they would tell you to go off site, and what you would do is just rest from the lead environment and drink milk. Milk will attach to the lead and pull it out of your system. Now, of course, having high lead levels for a long period of time is really not good for you, and good for your system. So, which is why they had the limits. So I was in there one day, and I was in my role. I was the liaison between the design team and the construction contractor and trade. So I would bring the design changes, and I would back to the contractor, and issues with the design back to the design team. So I sit there one day, and one of these big burly guys welding came up to me, and he was by one of these pots, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, you an engineer?" Well, yeah, I'm representing the engineering team. I'm not an engineer yet. And then, well, how the am I supposed to put this together? I'm supposed to weld this pot, this gusset on here, and the wall is only 6 inches apart. My arm is this long, the gun is this long, and the welding stick is this long. How am I supposed to fit in there, son? Whoa, well, I felt pretty short. Same height as I was now, but I felt pretty small. I don't know, sir. Let me find out. And what happened was the design engineer saw it on the drawing, and it looked great. You know, had my pot, had the weld symbol to weld down this gusset to reinforce it on site, a field weld symbol, a little arrow with a little flag, and they had the wall shown on the drawing, but they didn't really think about how that would be constructed. And so one of the things I learned from that was you got to respect everyone, and the trades have a tremendous amount of experience to share with you. You just have to listen. We're known as those effing engineers on site. Because sometimes engineers come across with an arrogance that we're better than the trades, and we're not. They have a lot that we can learn from them. They're the ones that are building this stuff every day, so they can give us feedback on what works and what doesn't, and then we can work with that to fit that into design codes. The second thing I learned from it is that you can learn a lot from being in the design office, learning why decisions are made, how you're demanding on time, a short period of time to produce a design and make sure it fits with all the standards and regulations. But you can also learn a lot from being on the construction site. You learn how things are built, and you can become better at whatever you do down the line. So I really recommend you spend a couple of years in both design and construction if you're going to go into that type of a career. And then you become a better project manager if you want to come and join Colliers. But if you decide you're going to be in design, you'll be a much better designer. If you decide you want to be on construction sites, you'll be much better on construction site once you've had that balance of both. So after that project was done, I finished it up and I'd saved up my vacation, and so it was time to go backpacking. So Germany had the World Cup in 2006, and so I went by myself and went and took an adventure. It was really interesting being on your own. You kind of either have to sit and by yourself or force yourself to get out of your comfort zone and go meet people. And that's really paid off for me a lot in my life. I was kind of shy, introverted engineer. I'm still on the, introverted, extroverted, but I've gotten a lot more comfortable with getting out of my comfort zone. And that's helped me tremendously in my career to get better at things that I didn't want to get better at necessarily, but needed to. There's always those aspects in your career that, part of your job that you may not be that comfortable with, but you have to do it because you love the rest of it. And so that, you need to get to that comfort. A lot of life lessons I learned while I was there, and the culture is just amazing to go see the different things in person as opposed to reading about it in a book. I still have super vivid memories of my trip there and the people I met, and certainly added to the person I am today. I highly recommend it to any of you to do. It's a lot tougher when you have a family and mortgage and a full-time job and career and everything. When you're younger and a little bit more free, much easier to take off for a couple months to go travel. When I got back, I was lured by the money. At the time, now obviously not the same today with oil prices and how well Alberta is doing, but Alberta was booming and Fort McMurray was crazy. And so they were just throwing money around and it was amazing time. So I went up to worked for a contractor on the Shell Albion Sands site. Now, Shell Albion Sands is about 45 minutes north of Fort McMurray, almost the furthest north refinery. In traffic, I know it seems odd in the middle of nowhere in Fort Mac, but the traffic's terrible because everyone's going the exact same direction in the morning at the same time. It'd take us an hour and a half to get to site and an hour and a half home. So I'd leave, catch the bus at 5:30, get on the site around 7, start the day, finish around 5:30 and drive home, be home by 7, go to the gym for a little bit, maybe go to the bar and have a bite to eat and a drink and head home. And we'd work 10 days on, 4 days off. Sometimes we'd work through our 4 days off and work 24 days straight, which was a gruel. You really had to push yourself to get through that, and you really needed those 4 days off when you finally got to them. Tremendous opportunity. I recommend anyone to go to remote locations to get experience. There's fewer people there, fewer people that want that opportunity. So in turn, if you're capable and prove you want to do stuff, they'll hand all sorts of responsibility to you wouldn't otherwise get in the South or where there's lots of other engineers around you. So I got handed stuff that were way beyond my years, caused a bit of stress, but you learned a lot, and I got well beyond and gained a lot of skill there. Highly recommend it. The project we were working on was a cooling circuit. So we were bringing, the oil and sand are separated using steam, and then the water is cooled and put into the Athabasca River. Now, it wasn't fully cooled, so what we were doing was adding further cooling to make sure that that water would be the same temperature as the water going into the Athabasca River. So there'd be a big cooling tower that the water would drip down and cool, heat exchangers, big giant pumps, size of a bedroom. And the pipes were a meter and a half in diameter. And so there's a lot of welding, a lot of pipe supports, and quite interesting. In the picture here, this is what we coined the trout pond. It was for overflow events in the refinery. When they would have some issues, they'd pump it out and pump it into this lined pond. It just looked funny sometimes. You'd see a little barrel floating along sometimes, and just, it was fresh oil, so it was still hot, and you see the steam coming off it, although it's probably about -35 at this time. Very interesting stuff, really large scale, lots of great controls and interesting types of things for you in that area. And certainly rewarding to be helping the environment and giving back by preventing that warmer water going into the river. I got a bit tired of being in Fort McMurray. It just drains on you. It's not, it's a really work hard lifestyle. And so I moved to Ottawa. I had family, and my close friends from university were here. So I moved out. I think my parents thought I was nuts, leaving a great paying job to go to nothing. I was unemployed when I came. I didn't have anything lined up. So I moved, started looking for jobs, and I found Colliers. It was MHPM at the time. We've changed names since then. And I applied for a project coordinator. I was really a project manager where I was in the past, and had that kind of experience, and had to have a huge cut to my ego to come from Fort McMurray salary down to an Ottawa coordinator salary, and the role change. But I stuck with what I'd learned earlier, was just to say yes, do it well, and you'll advance. Trust that will get you ahead. So it did. I was only in the coordinator role for about 6 months, and I got promoted into managing projects on my own. So I was managing small and medium type projects, and did that really well, and advanced on to being a senior PM. So I was taking on bigger projects, a $60 million water project, $15 million recreation center on my own, having people, an assistant project manager, work with me. And what I found was I was really good at talking to our clients and understanding what came next, and getting them to trust me and know that I'm going to do a really good job on this project. I could also help you with your other project. So I'd get in new work, and that helped me, along with all the good bases that I was doing, helped me to move into being the principal. I started with a team of about 3 or 4 people, and in 5 years, I grew that team to over 25 people. Not from people handing them from other teams, but for me really building that business and going and finding the work and building it, which I found very rewarding, very challenging, a lot different than managing projects, and the psychology of it is a lot different as well. There's a lot of ups and there's a lot of downs, and so you got to really push through those and be determined and persevere. So after building that team, 2 years ago, I was promoted into being vice president. So now I manage several principals who have their teams, and I have about 70 people that work for me in my business unit. I never sort of stop learning, and I'm always looking at what's next. You see the 3 question marks there. What's next for me? I don't know, but I'm going to keep pushing and see, do what I'm doing well now, try and advance and take on new challenges, and I'll see where it goes for me. It's been proven well for me in my career, and I suspect it will continue to do so. So one of the things you really need to pay attention to is your brand. How do people perceive you, and what do they think of when they think of you? Do they see you as being that next leader in your physical appearance and in how you present yourself? Is hugely important, and definitely not paid attention to enough by engineers. You need to know your place. You need to know what you're applying for. If you're into sustainability, you need to maybe not drive a big pickup truck because it doesn't quite match in your environmental factors. You need to, if you're applying to an executive position, you need to show up in a suit and tie. If you're going to work for a contractor, maybe not show up in a suit and tie. Look at maybe a little bit more casual, business casual kind of wear. It's not just about your looks, but it's how your identity is, what you do along the way is really important, and you should think about it. Where do you want to go? You know, you don't have to figure out, oh, I want to be a CEO in 20 years, but maybe think about where you want to go in 2-3 years and start acting like that role now. That's been good for me. You know, as a senior project manager, I just started doing some of those principal things, and that just led to me becoming a principal. I didn't ask for it. It was given to me because I proved myself, and I did all those things well that I needed to, and looked for more to take on. So I think it's something that, you know, engineers don't think about enough, and certainly, you know, we could do a lot better job. I think engineers are tremendously valuable in a lot of areas. We don't need to have accountants running our companies. Engineers can do that. But we need to think about some of these other softer things and not just focus on the technical aspects that engineers can typically focus on. Think about that. When we hire people, we're looking at social media to figure out what you've been, maybe a little bit of what type of person you are. It's not everything, but it is a factor. And so what others are saying about you will be hugely important throughout your career. Pay attention to it. It is important. So what am I doing now? I'm hiring and attracting, retaining the best talent that I can so we can have interesting projects. I develop those people so that they can take on new challenges, make sure they have the skills and the tools to deliver on that. I'm doing lots of business development to gain new projects to feed those project managers that want those interesting projects. I need to keep finding them. And in order to find them, you need to figure out some strategic planning to figure out where is our business going? What new services do we want to offer? What new geographies should we go after? And so all those things, I'm involved with setting the direction for the company as well as for my region. I'm responsible for quality controls and setting up protocols to make sure that we maintain, as we grow, that quality deliverable that we expect and that our clients have grown to expect of us. Of course, the training and mentoring, I do informal and formal mentoring programs that we offer within Colliers, and I participate, and I take that extra time. I also, you know, I make sure that our risks are taken care of, make sure we're not going to get sued, make sure we have the right processes. When an issue does come up, I get involved. And one of the biggest things I do is I solve problems. I've always been part of problem solving, and I quite enjoy that. Sometimes it's stressful, especially as I've moved up. I get the bigger problems when they get up to me. Sometimes the other ones are taken care of before they get to me. So that can be stressful, but also one of the things that I enjoy the most about working is problem solving. And it's in our DNA as engineers. We like to solve problems. So one of the things I say is, you know, if you're, you know, even if you're on the right track, you get run over if you just sit there. You need to advance yourself. You need to keep adding training and do more things, get involved with different associations, challenge yourself. That, you know, if you're not, someone beside you is going to challenge himself and move past you. And it's not a lot. It's just keep moving that bar just a little bit. I participate once a month in a tech group with similar executives in different companies. And we compare notes and we talk. For one day a month, I dedicate to that, my professional development. And, you know, it's little baby steps. I learn a little bit each month, but that helps me in the long run to continue to get better so that I don't get run over by that train. So I'll leave you with that. I hope you've gotten something out of it and that you got some tips on how you can advance your career. I really enjoyed this. I hope to maybe see you in person at some point in the future, or maybe reviewing your resume and interviewing you when you put in your application with us. Thank you and good luck.